Hello, everyone. I hope you guys were enjoying that tune. That was actually Erica Storm, who's going to be on our show Monday, the 24th of this month. So, if you guys want to catch up with Erica Storm, tune in on Voces Unidas, and they'll be with us on the 24th. And today is Sunday. We're here with the Voces team. And your host today, I always say guest, I don't know why. Your host today is Diosy.
Maria.
Alex Infinity.
Zacarias.
Yay! And so you guys are listening to KROJ 101.5 FM. We're coming to you guys live from the city of San Fernando, broadcasting out of Panorama City. And we are really excited to be here with you guys. We had a meeting with our radio team last week, and we're feeling really excited, really happy to be here, to be growing with you all, to have these two new hosts with us today. Not just today, but you guys have obviously heard from them in the past, but they're here in the studio with us on Sunday, which is a little shift we had where we are now gonna have Sundays be open to all of our hosts with Voces Unidas and our team in general, because we want to open up the conversation to different perspectives and kind of just have that natural dialogue amongst ourselves. We don't really get to meet up as much during the month because we all have a lot of different work that we do, and so this Sunday morning is really a nice opportunity for us to just come together and talk about what's been going on in the month. So with that being said, 2025, wow, what a month. What a year already. 2 months.
What a month.
What a month. It's been 2 months.
What a year.
And,
it's only February.
It's been a lot. And so, how has everything that's been going on in the community shifted your guys' plans for the year? Has it affected your guys' plans at all? With your personal lives, your work lives, your social lives. I know myself, yesterday I went to the beach, and there's parts of Santa Monica that are still closed, and so there's a lot of traffic. It's backed up. And that was a little bit of a reminder to me, oh my gosh, there's a lot going on, outside of the San Fernando Valley right now too. And
the PCH is supposed to be closed for an indefinite amount of time, I keep hearing.
Yeah, we definitely weren't able to drive on PCH. We had to get off before we reached PCH. But yeah, that to me, that was just yesterday a little reminder of what's going on in the greater LA area. But what about you guys? What's going on?
Well, for me, I think it has shifted things where I have to dig into my emotional resilience, because a lot of the things that we're going through are beyond our control. Like the executive orders that don't make any sense. Half of them are unconstitutional. The other half are being, contested in court. There's judges that are trying to stand up for really just equality and freedom. But I think that's where I'm feeling like I need to get a little bit more resilience, and it's hard because I'm tired of doing that. But yeah, it's been hard. And then my personal problems are compounding that. So not that I have problems, but I've been going through some hardships too. So I lost my little dog.
Yeah.
I know. I lost him. He got out of our house. It was one of those things where you just kind of with the other person, in the house, you just don't, it was one of those accidents. And we've been looking for him. His name is Donnie. He's a little long coat Chihuahua. I still have hope, but that, and then just things at work and dealing with the like I said, the administration stuff and all the changes. My work deals a lot with public funds, so that's where I'm like, oh, I wonder what's gonna happen.
Yeah, that part right there. I know that, shout out to Melissa, but I know Melissa's work has been affected, and a lot of other folks that I know that work in nonprofit. I know that, Planned Parenthood has been affected. I know a girl who worked for Planned Parenthood, and her program got cut off, and so no more funding, no more work. And so, hello, Ana Malia, who's on Instagram Live saying hi.
Wait, did we forget to do a land acknowledgement?
Yeah, so actually, let's go back to
I
that.
was looking at our runner show, and I'm like, wait, how did
you
we
guys?
skip that?
I'm so
I'm telling you, it's we're all going through it.
No,
you know?
¿cómo se llama? Like when you're I can't find the word, but anyway,
overstimulated, overwhelmed.
Let's do
too many tabs open.
Exactly, too many tabs open. I'm so distracted. There you go. But Zacarias, please do us the honor.
Today we recognize and honor the original occupants and stewards of the land on which we now gather. Many of us joined this gathering from lands that are the traditional home territory of the Fernandeño Tatavian Band of Mission Indians. Voces Unidas recognizes and thanks the first people of this ancestral and unceded territory of the Fernandeño Tatavian Band of Mission Indians, which is now occupied by the city of LA and residents like us. It is important to honor their elders, past and present, and descendants who are citizens of the Fernandeño Tatavian Band of Mission Indians. We recognize that the tribe is still here, and we are committed to uplifting their stories, their culture, and their community. Today, we also honor the survival, adaptations, forced assimilation, and resilience and creativity of Native peoples, past, present, and future. We encourage participants to consider their responsibilities to people and land, both here and elsewhere, and to stand in solidarity with Native, Indigenous, and First Nations peoples and their sovereignty, culture, heritage, and lives. We also pause to acknowledge and give thanks for the work upon which our country, our state, and our institutions are built. We remember that our country was built on the labor of enslaved people who were kidnapped and brought to the U.S. from the African continent, and we recognize the continuing contribution of their survivors. We also recognize the work of all immigrants, whether voluntary, involuntary, trafficked, forced, or undocumented, who contributed to the building of the country and continue to be part of our workforce. We recognize all unpaid care work. To the people who contributed to this immeasurable work and their descendants, we acknowledge our and their indelible mark on the space in which we gather today. Our collective responsibility is to critically question these histories, repair the damage, and honor, protect, and sustain this land. And the source is the Fernandeño Tatavian Band of Mission Indians land acknowledgements on our homelands and the importance of land and labor acknowledgements.
Thank you,
Thank
Zacarias. And shout out to Delora, who has always kind of walked us through the land acknowledgements and prepared the land acknowledgement for us and the research for us to be able to provide that for you all. And it's something that I'm still learning a lot about, making sure that I honor and respect the indigenous peoples of the land and keep in mind, what that means throughout, my life here. And so with that being said, let's go back to the conversation we were having. Thank you, Tere. Thank you, comadre.
So those are my trauma. Who's next?
Yeah. And, it's weird, like you're saying. I feel like I've been experiencing a weird, like, kind of cognitive dissonance. I think I'm using that right.
No,
it's
right.
Of, like, going to work and then, like, scrolling through Instagram and, like, I don't know, online shopping or looking at, all these things, and then you hear all these, like, these real things that are happening right now. This whole thing about undocumented folks being sent to Guantanamo Bay, and I'm like,
what is this?
How, like, it feels so arbitrary, and, like, just doing, like, daily tasks feels so, I'm, like, trying hard to not look through this with this, like, bleak lens and just complete pessimist, but it's weird, you know. I was
And we
journaling
talked about this
this
with you. Remember when you were a guest on an earlier Las Comadres show, and we talked about how you had some roots where your I think it was like your great grandfather.
Yeah, my grandpa, not my
Your
grandpa,
your
dude.
grandpa.
That got deported like twice, dude. He was a bracero.
He was a
yeah.
part of the Bracero program, and you know that wasn't that long ago. That was just a
Yeah.
few decades ago, and before that, it was even worse, where they were just rounding up people like now they're just throwing them into Guantanamo Bay, like it's
That's actually insane.
Yeah,
like,
it is.
that
What?
has to be a human rights violation.
Oh, it definitely. Like that doesn't even sound real, but it's literally happening in front of us. And like, how are we? It feels so weird.
How
like
are we
going
just
to work
sending
and
our family members
I gotta
to
wo-
work?
Yeah,
sending our
worrying
kids
about like
to-
I don't know, watching a movie, and like we're doing it. I'm, like and I know that there's also that part of like, well, there's different forms of resistance, different forms of you have to still enjoy life. You can't just always be pessimistic, but it's hard right now. It feels really strange and scary, honestly.
Yeah. No, I mean
Yeah.
it's definitely affecting the community like drastically because I haven't seen as many people out. I haven't seen this Valentine's Day weekend was the first time that I saw a lot of people out since like
Yeah.
the administration changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, even like street vendors, I don't really see them as much anymore.
Oh, there was a lot for
this-
Valentine's Day.
for
I
the
saw.
Valentine's Day,
That's what
yeah.
I'm saying. Like this Valentine's Day was
Yeah.
like it was nice to see the community come out.
I think it did just people just felt a little safer being out when you know that there's gonna be someone else right next to you
That's true.
vending flowers.
That's what it is, dude. We need solidarity. We organize, you know?
Yeah.
It's hard, though. But I had an interesting little experience. My mom, you guys, or Diosy, you were there the other day. We were going through my grandpa's old garage, and we found some old documents and stuff. And so one of the things we found was, like, some of my mom's old letters to my grandma back in, like, 80 and 82 or something like that.
Gosh.
When she was, like, younger than I am now. You know, she was, like,
That's
20
so
probably,
wild.
or 21. And she was going through them and reading it to me, and it was just a trip going through like, wow, like imagine where you were writing this and what you were going. And I was thinking about that because I journal a lot. I journal not every day, but like pretty regularly. And that's just maybe not silly, but like random. I always, for some reason, I had this like fascination with like Anne Frank, dude, and that whole like, and like you've seen these things about people. It'll be a post someone, where it has this whole excerpt from like it's unnamed source, and you reading it and you're like, wow, it's happening. That's someone right now. And it's like, actually, this is Anne Frank, like what, 70 years ago, 80 years ago. And it's a trip. And I'm just thinking about like, how are we, the people of today, and like, what is the story going to be, 60, 70, 80, 100 years from now of what's happening right now. And, hopefully things don't go to that extreme. And like, I don't want to fear monger or whatever, but like, it's scary, bro. I'm not going to lie. It feels crazy right now. And,
I'm watching a show called Bolivar, and this is so like random, but right now what you said, like what is the story going to be in, the future, 50, 100 years from now. And in the show, like the Bolivar, he says, in history, the history that gets written down is the people that win, is the people that triumph.
Yeah.
And so that's why we need to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to document, to make sure we're getting all the accurate facts. Like this is exactly what we're doing here. This is us like in a form documenting a bit of what's going on in the San Fernando Valley, Northeast San Fernando Valley at this exact moment. Like we're talking about current events, And so yeah, what's the story going to be? We'll see. But hopefully, the story is that we're here and that we are, living our lives and that we are more united, because this is definitely like a very, very scary space to be. But I wanted to give Zacarias some space to share also, like, you're from the San Gabriel Valley, and you commute out here for work. And I'm sure that you see a lot of, similarities amongst the communities that we come from. They have very similar demographics. And how, like, so how has that been for you? How have you experienced the last 2 months?
I resonate with a lot of what has already been shared. Dealing with carrying this cognitive dissonance, all kinds of anxieties, fears, nervousness, rage. it's, they say the average lifespan of an empire is 250 years. We're at 249 this year for this country. So that knowledge gives me a little bit of hope, that we're witnessing the collapse as we speak. It's not a matter of when or if it does. It's it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And I think we just we're living that, we're witnessing it or experiencing it directly right here on the West Coast in LA County, right? With the fires, with these immigration sweeps, deportation sweeps, all these executive orders, and there's an intensifying atmosphere of more militarized police. I feel like police presence, military presence, and I've been thinking a lot about what is keeping this all together. And to me, I feel that we are in this state because of authority, our conformity, and lethal weapons that people wearing costumes and badges who have this illusion of authority that we all conform to. No human has another power or dominance to assert over another, but that's how we have been socialized and trained to live. I carry this rage of, I have the desire like to confront a cop, to confront an ICE agent, and to, really ask them if they've ever for a second used the full power of their own conscience, their own critical thought. Do they really even question these laws that they are protecting, that they're carrying out? Do you really deep down believe that another human being can be marked with a label such as illegal? Like, really sit and think about that. Look into another human being's eyes, the ones that you're getting paid to go and capture and destroy their family. And can you really live with yourself when you look at them and tell them that? So these are like some questions that this state that we are in, that I think about a lot, that I hope one day, I'll be able to look into another person's of authority's eyes and ask them to answer.
They're not allowed to be smarter than a specific threshold, right?
I've heard of that. Like, there's no educational requirements.
Well, no, what I mean is that they are looking for, this is for cops, because I know there has been a lawsuit. There was actually a lawsuit where a particular individual wanted to be in law enforcement. So he did all of the things that he needed to do, passed all the tests, physical tests and all that stuff. And then he got to the psychological evaluation. And that's basically where they want to just measure you to make sure that you are not overly violent, right? But at the same time, they also want to measure that you're not too independent.
You have to be obedient.
You have to, right. So there is a threshold of intelligence that the police departments are looking for. And so this man was too smart. And they said, well, basically your job satisfaction is not going to be there because you're too smart. So we're not going to make you a cop because you're overqualified for that. In what industry do you measure qualifications where you're like, I don't want the most qualified, free-thinking individual that can give me the best result. I want the individual that's going to listen to orders. And this has been studied because when the Holocaust happened and when World War II happened, there was a lot of questioning, like the Nuremberg trials. They were like, how is it that you led these people into a gas chamber to eradicate them? And a lot of them said that they were just following orders. So then you look at human behavior, and there is an experiment called the Milgram experiment. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with that.
You're so knowledgeable.
You guys, I love, this is why Comadre Tere that's why we have a whole segment with Comadre Tere, because she will go and do all this research. And not even, sometimes she doesn't even do the research. It's just like, She just like comes out with the randomest facts, and you're like,
This is so
"What?"
random because like how you were.
I just want to make sure everybody knows that we're listening. You guys are tuned into KROJ 101.5 FM. We're coming to you guys live from our studios here in San Fernando and broadcasting out of Panorama City.
Yes.
Go ahead.
No, what I was just gonna say that if you don't know who Stanley Milgram is, and Stanley Milgram was I want to say a professor, and he was conducting an experiment, and basically he wanted to go back to that question of how is it that people can commit such horrific acts on other people. And so he set up an experiment, and basically he grabbed a bunch of people and was like, look, I'm gonna give you these orders, and you're gonna test the person. You're not gonna you can't see them. They're in another room, but you're gonna test this person in what you're the stuff, the items that we're giving you. You have to test them, and if they get it wrong or they do it wrong, you have to administer a punishment, and it's a small electrical shock. But as the person gets the questions wrong, the electrical shock increases. So this experiment is already skewed to give us a specific, I think, because the participants didn't know that all of this was set up, that the people were not really receiving these shocks, but they were testing how far they would go. And as they're doing these tests, you could hear the person screaming, and there's footage of this. You can look it up. It's really interesting. And these people are screaming, I'm in pain, I'm hurting, I have a heart condition, like I'm really gonna get hurt right now. And so like the person pressing the button was like looking at like, do I keep doing this? And like the investigator, the person that was performing the experiment was like, you have to follow the rules. This is what the rules are. So then they would just keep pressing it.
So crazy.
Now there comes the where informed consent. Like if you're gonna take part of an experiment, they have to tell you exactly what's gonna happen and how they're gonna do it. But these people were not informed, but that was specifically to measure how far they would go. So they weren't really hurting anybody, but they went all the way to see how far they would be willing to go based on the orders of someone
And
that was an authority.
And that's just like a controlled environment. Imagine compounding that with all these years and generations of this propaganda, of this nationalism, of this whatever, and being taught to believe these certain things. Like,
it goes right back to what he's saying. Like, how is it that there are human beings that can inflict not just like physical torture or pain, but emotional torture and pain? Because when you're separating a person that doesn't have proper documents to whatever, and they have children, what is going to happen to those children? And how are their lives going to be impacted in the long run? Like, who's to say that this child that was doing really well in school, getting good grades, very active in after school programs, but mom is now been ripped from her, she's not going to continue to do well. She's going to suffer in some way. So that's really the question of like Zacarias was saying, like, how is it that the effect
that it has.
Right.
I think the rhetoric that's used has so much to do with it too. Kind of like what you're saying. Like, it's one thing to have to look someone in the eyes and say like, I see you as this, but this rhetoric that side uses of like trying to dehumanize these people or undocumented folks or whatever, anyone that's like you said that word, like illegal, like immediately that turns them from not just this other human being to like this subpar thing where like, like, yeah, I can enforce this little thing over them because there's quote unquote
because they broke the law,
exactly, or something like that. And then it keeps on compounding. Like you said, it's like it starts off just maybe a little small thing, and then you get used to that one, and then it's like, okay, we can do a little bit more, and then you get used to that. Like the tolerance starts to build.
I feel like
build.
it's like conditioning as well, because I just feel that I feel like it's been normalized to, like, bullying is normalized. Like, how is it that there's so much bullying in schools? Like, personally for me, like in my kids' lives, school has been such a hard environment to navigate. Their safe space is home, and there are kids who their safe space is school, but school is like full of bullies, full of and like teachers are desensitized, you know, to it, and students are desensitized to it, and it starts in these like small like social structured environments that make it okay, and then you continue to grow in these structured environments, and it's always okay, and you know, and then you go into the real world, and we have a bunch of people that are just kind of spewing all of this like hate, and like never really learned how to respect one another, how to treat one another, how to have communication with one another. You know, yesterday we were having a class here at Pueblo de Salud, actually, and there was a girl who talked about like we should have some type of programming to teach youth like soft skills. They were like, what is soft skills? And they were like, well, like how to communicate, how to, you know, like these skills that we don't learn in school. Mm-hmm. And I'm like empathy, you know, like compassion, like, and those are things that like, unfortunately, I feel like a lot of adults, at least myself, like in my early 20s, I experienced a lot of my peers, my friends, learning how to navigate compassion and empathy and all of those other feelings that we never learned in school. We never learned how to decipher them, you know? And so I feel like that has a lot to do with, you know, what's going on in current society as well.
Some of my biggest bullies were my teachers.
There you go.
Ooh. So that taught me as a child that I can only go this far, right? Mm-hmm. Like if it's not okay with them, I can't. Especially being a child that was undocumented initially. Mm-hmm. I came on a visa and it expired, and then we sought path to citizenship. But I didn't know the language. I didn't know the culture. I didn't know the food. When I asked for a chicken sandwich, I got something that was not a chicken sandwich. I was like, what is this? Mm-hmm. This is chicken, but it's not I was so confused. So, not knowing a lot I think made me vulnerable. And because my parents didn't know, and they were also acclimating themselves to the culture and the language and everything, I think it made me vulnerable to being picked on by my teachers.
And then your peers see that,
and it makes it okay for them to be mean to them.
To be mean to you.
The authority.
Yeah,
the cycle.
And that's where that like that's where that conditioning starts, where you're afraid of authority, where you're, you know, or you're like, it creates that, like she said, that barrier where you're like, I could only push this far, you know. We're gonna go ahead and take a quick little musical break on this note, and we'll be right back. Go ahead and enjoy this playlist that we have from Alex Infinity. It's on Spotify, called Las Comadres, locals only. And yeah, we'll be right back in just a few.
What's going on, everyone? My name is Alex Infinity, and you are now tuned in to Voces Unidas on Radio Lean KROJ 101.5 FM, broadcasting live from the city of Panorama City, California. I'm here with your hosts, me, Alex Infinity,
Zacarias,
Maria,
and Diosy,
the one and onlys.
And
you know, we want to take a moment to acknowledge Black History Month, but I also want to propose the question, what about Black Future Month, you know? What's the future look like? Like, you know what I mean? The future is important. The present, Black Present Month, Black Future Month. I think every day should be that, so.
I know. I limit it to just 1 month. I think it's like the same thing with like Hispanic History Month, which I have an issue with the word Hispanic, but I'm not talking about that.
But like, why just? I mean, of course, it's important to acknowledge the past and all the things that have been done, the people who have made. But what about the future? You know,
that's so true.
We're gonna be here forever too. You know, and we're not just a thing of the past.
That's true.
It's hard to remember that though. Right now, everything is.
Yeah.
It just feels so uncertain that to think about the future is almost like it feels weird to like think of what is life gonna look like in 4 years. Is it gonna be better or is it gonna be worse?
Yeah.
Can it get any worse than this? Because this is pretty bad. This is like the breakdown of democracy right before our eyes.
Yeah, but I feel like this is like necessary too, to like fuel that anger that's needed to get us to that next step, because like that's exactly what we're saying. Like the future is
Yeah.
here. It's now. We have to act on it. And if we don't learn from our past, if we don't reflect on our past, you know, the future has very bleak possibilities. So it's about, you know, making sure that we open up more opportunities for ourselves by reflecting on like our history. And, you know, when it comes to Black History Month, when it comes to Hispanic Heritage Month, like, it is only a month, obviously long, but I think that month of reflection leaves us going into the next month, like, with that reminder. We carry it, you know, and it may not be a reminder like every day or like but every month has something that, you know, we can reflect on. I think that's like, I think that's special, you know, like that we're doing that as a community, and that we've created holidays around these subjects and topics, because if not, then we're just going to continue, you know, like I remember growing up and there was no, like, you know, representation when it comes to celebrating our heritage or others' heritage. And so I really enjoy it, and I enjoy learning every month about a new topic, or, you know, there's always like a new, like a new thing that's celebrated, like, you know, something that's appointed for a month. And for me, it's always interesting to find like what is this month about, this, you know. And so
It's all about diversity, but now that diversity is under attack, like what is June gonna look like for us that celebrate Pride Month?
yeah,
You know, like, is Juneteenth still a holiday? Because Black History Month is being erased from government websites, and like, are we gonna have one this year? I don't know. And it's
That's a good
so
question.
it's so discouraging. But like, again, going back to what we were saying earlier, is that it's so important. What we're doing right now is we're talking about this, and it's being recorded, and people are listening to it, and we're having the discussion that otherwise people wouldn't be having or listening to, or maybe are too afraid to say anything about, because it seems like criticizing anything for any reason right now, you could be criticized yourself too. So there's a lot of
Yeah.
fear in that.
Yeah. Well, we're going to go into the next part of our segment. I'm super grateful for, you know, this conversation that we had. We reflected a lot on, you know, this last 2 months, on how we're responding to like these shifting times, how we're rebuilding together. It is easy to get overwhelmed right now. Like we jumped in on this segment, like kind of feeling a little bit of that overwhelming sensation, you know. And so I definitely feel a lot more grounded this second half hour just by being in you guys' presence. So thank you guys so much for that. But this second hour is dedicated to Platicas with Zacarias and Diosy. Joining us in this Platica is going to be Alex Infinity and Comadre Maria. And Zacarias and I kind of had a brief phone call earlier this week to talk about, you know, what subjects are we going to touch on this week, and I mean this month. And so we did want to go a little bit into, you know, what we are seeing with the fires, and, you know, just continue that conversation, because like I said earlier, this segment, you know, I went to the beach, and PCH is closed, and it's going to be closed indefinitely for some time. And, you know, a lot of our community is facing long-term impacts due to these fires. And so we definitely don't want to just brush them under the rug and forget about them. This month, you know, we've had a lot of wind. We've had quite a bit of rain, which is beautiful to know and to see. But with the winds, you know, I think there's, for me, a bit of trauma, where now whenever it's windy, I'm like scared. I'm genuinely scared. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I hope another fire doesn't break out, or I hope, you know. Do you guys have any of those like feelings? Are you guys like kind of feeling like
PTSD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For myself, I am not necessarily terrified of, like fires or anything, but what I am afraid of is losing power again, because losing power meant having to figure out what you're going to do with all of the groceries that you just purchased.
Yeah.
And that was like stressful because you're hoping that the power comes back and it's not coming back. And I was lucky that I had my power restored within 24 hours, but there were people that went days without power.
Yeah.
So that I'm like a little like afraid of the wind picking up and then just losing power all over again, or the rain knocking down power or anything affecting the power. I think this recent blackout really reminded me how dependent we are on energy, and that like fossil fuel energy that we're burning, and that we need to find alternative ways of creating electrical power for people, not just like for me and my groceries, but like for the people that have respirators, that have medical equipment that they're relying on. Like they can't just not have that for 6 days.
Yeah. That's actually something that I haven't really considered, actually, like within, like, I was very focused on, like, the experiences of, like, vendors and people out on the streets, because that's what I was experiencing. But I did lose power, but I didn't lose power for more than a couple hours at a time. It was in and out, but as long as we kept our fridge closed, like, we didn't really lose groceries or anything like that. But I know people that lost power for, like, 3 to 4 days. And I haven't really thought about that. Like, there are people that are on, life-sustaining equipment, and that's actually very scary. Medications that need to be refrigerated.
And if you're an elderly person, like if your abuelita, is refusing to live with you, refusing to leave her house, you're not going to move abuelita. You're going to leave her there. But then abuelita loses power and her insulin needs to be refrigerated. But abuelita doesn't want to leave. Like, that fine balance of trying to take care of her elders, but then having their elders take care of themselves too, because that's really important, like being independent. It's sometimes older folks don't want the help. I remember my father being a very elderly gentleman, and I remember buying him clothes and doing things for him, and he would just be like, he wouldn't take it, and I would be like, why? Let me take care of you. But that's the mentality and how he grew up. Like, you have to be self-sustaining. You can't let people feel bad for you or feel sorry for you. So that was my experience. But it also, thinking about my elderly father made me think of like elderly people who do require electricity for assistance, like an elevator. Assisted living facilities need elevators. Like, not every elderly person can go up and down the stairs.
Yeah, this is true.
Well, that makes me think about like what our generation and the coming generations will be like as elders. Having grown up not in this digital age, like what are we gonna be like in 40 plus years?
I would like to add on to that, but before, I want to make a disclaimer and just let whoever's listening know anything that I say is my opinion only. I'm only speaking on my own behalf, my own perspective, my own worldview. And this question of what is the future going to look like for us reminds me of a story that I got to experience this past December through January in Chiapas, Mexico, at a Zapatista encuentro. 2 days were full of mesas and pláticas of academics, Zapatista militants, promotores de salud, de educación. And there was a story that El Capitan Marcos shared about a young Zapatista who was visited by a Zapatista from the year 2144 to the television. And this young Zapatista wanted to know what life was going to be like in the year 2144. So through the television, they asked the Zapatista that visited from the future, what's life going to be like? And the Zapatista from the future responded, it depends. The young Zapatista asked, on what? The Zapatista from the future said, it depends on what you do in your calendar and your time while you exist here on earth in this physical form. So thinking about this topic that we're on right now, what is the future for those of us who want to live to be elders going to look like? It depends what we do right now, today. And thinking about all the destruction from these fires that we are experiencing, there's so much that can be learned from this experience, as painful and ugly and as much misery that it's produced. This is a sign. These are signs that things are only getting worse. Mm-hmm. You know, I've seen on social media, even some news articles, columns, or even talking with people in the day-to-day about it, that have called this fire situation a natural disaster. Mm-hmm. Yes, we know fires or wildfires are natural, but the scale of destruction is unnatural. And I feel confident in saying that the scale of destruction that LA County has just experienced is the consequence of centuries of capitalism. Mm-hmm. What are we going to rebuild from here? You know, so many people lost their whole lives, their whole livelihood. Not their whole lives, but you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. Sacrificing their every minute of their waking day to build, to work towards living in the communities of Altadena, Pasadena, Palisades, or if not them, their ancestors, those who came before them, who sacrificed their lives to be able to leave something behind for their children. And then we think about all the people whose lives are destroyed as collateral because they're stuck in service jobs serving these communities. Are we just going to rebuild the same kind of communities divided by race and class, the same kind of middle class American dream type utopian illusion of a community? A lot of these homes, I feel like, burn because they're built on land where they're in ways where they're not supposed to. It's unnatural. But I also want to acknowledge that this is so easy for me to say as someone who is not directly affected. This is just my analysis, right? But I say this with the knowledge that maybe it won't be a fire that disrupts my life or other people's lives who have not been touched by the consequences of global capitalism yet. But it's going to come, and it could be power next. It could be water. At this encuentro in Chiapas, there was a play performed by the young Zapatistas called La Tormenta, the storm. And in that play, they showed how when this storm is coming, or not coming, but it's already here, this storm of violence, of destruction that the system of capitalism is creating, there's going to be violence. People are going to hurt each other. There's not going to be any more food to be found in grocery stores. There's not going to be any medicine to be found in pharmacies. We're not going to know how to react, how to live, because we've been living in this society where convenience is everything. And to lose power for a day or a few days seems like the end of the world for a lot of us that have only known growing up here in the core of empire in the United States, in a mega urban center that is LA. But LA itself too is such a unsustainable. It's a extractive geography. Something like 80% of the water that comes to LA comes elsewhere, like hundreds of miles away. Mm-hmm. Around like 30% comes from Owens Valley, like 200 plus miles north. It's draining lakes, draining rivers, natural resources from different parts of the Southwest of Mother Earth. So these are some thoughts that I've been having when it comes to, what are we going to do from here? How are we going to prepare for what Zapatismo calls el día después, or the day after capitalism, the day after authority, the day after this system of hierarchy that a lot of us have only been are only going to be alive to experience. What are we gonna rebuild for when it does collapse? How are we gonna catch ourselves? And I think we're seeing a glimpse of that with all the mutual aid that has come together to support the victims of the fire catastrophes. So many people are coming together to put together basic needs, food, clothing. People are offering free services. But it shouldn't take disaster for us to come together in this way. We shouldn't have to wait till the next massive fire or the next flood to build these kind of mutual aid networks that we are going to need to survive.
Yeah. I think what do you think about, because I'm of the same opinion. Like, it shouldn't take these extreme disasters or incidents for us to, have these networks or these mutual aid. But it really is like, or it feels like it really is because of this capitalist system, having to work a 9-to-5 job, and then, it depletes your soul, it depletes your energy, and like, by the time you're done with that, it's like, to go and do this other thing. I think a lot of people, it's hard. I know that's why, like, I know, like, when I was in university too, I remember when I was younger, I had so much energy to, like, yeah, let's organize, let's do this. And as I've gotten older, and maybe, this is just me, but like, you get tired, and it feels, you really do get that burnout. And I don't think that's a good thing, and it should be like that, but like, how do we organize this thing where it is all year round, it's not this dependent, and it's also sustainable, where people, it isn't relying on like the labor of people to like till they burn out and then are just gone,
Yeah. I think learning about how to, not even learning, but I think, well, personally for me, I do a lot in the community. People always tell me, like, how do you do all of this? How do you do so much? How are you involved in so much? And I think, yeah, like, I've experienced burnout, definitely, like, it's hard. But I think that when you make it your lifestyle to be a part of collectives, be a part of coalitions, be a part of spaces that are creating that change that you want to see, you start to build your villages around these movements, around these around this lifestyle. I guess it's a lifestyle. It really is a lifestyle. And like, you find, at least for me, I'm learning still, right? And like, even finding like people like Zacarias, and like having conversations about like the Zapatista movement, and like, I have friends who talk to me about the Chicano movement, about, like Chicano liberation, and like all of these like different topics that I didn't learn about in school. I didn't go to university. Like, I didn't take Chicano, studies. I didn't learn about, I learned just what I needed to learn to go and work and figure it out. And that's exactly what I did, until I reached burnout. And reaching burnout, like, really taught me how to lean into community, and how to lean into, like, it taught me that, like, community is a lifestyle. Like, being in community, like, you have to seek it. It's like, you if you don't, like, you're gonna get sucked into, like, the cycle that society is. And that's not healthy for us. It's not. That's why we have all the problems we have. And so it definitely, like, has to be intentional. And the more that we educate and we teach others about this way of life, I think the more support we're gonna have to create, like, bigger villages, because right now, like, our villages are very small. Like, it's very common for people to say, like, for me, my people are, like, less than the 5 people in my hand, like, that's like a something proud to say. But, like, for me, like, I have such a beautiful village, and, like, I know that maybe I can't rely on this person for this, but I could rely on them for something else. And somebody said the other day, like, people like to see how others can service them, and what, like, those people mean to to you and as an individual, but that person said, I like to see how people see me, and I want to be like that for that person. So for me, for example, like for my comadre, like I'm her friend. I talk to her. We share like our lives together in conversation. But I have another friend who like is a completely different like need and bond with her, and we like it's like we live together, we do different things together, and I know that I can go to her for those things. I know I can go to my comadre for other things, and then we do come together at times, and we like support each other as a unit as well. And so
But
build
also,
like growing that village and growing those networks, going from individuals to organizations to, you know, who in the community can we trust to build this lifestyle with. And I think that's where my focus is right now, is like who is a part of my village, and how can we grow this village, how can we support this village.
I was just gonna say, but it also depends on like the individual to understand that, like, her having another friend or having someone else to depend on doesn't mean that I have to feel some kind of way. And I feel like that ends up happening a lot in organizing, whether it's community organizing or organizing in any kind of way or advocating for whatever. Because I also, like she said, it's a lifestyle, and whatever it is that you choose to devote your energy, it becomes a lifestyle. I lived the lifestyle of animal rescue, animal welfare 24/7 for almost 8 years. And that burnout that you're talking about, we called it compassion fatigue. We literally had the organization I worked for has been around for 30 plus years, national organization, very, very well known. So they were able to afford a coach. And we had a coach come in, talk to us as a group to give us ways on how to combat compassion fatigue. And we would have one-on-ones with her. Now, she wasn't like a therapist, but we would talk about the things that we were dealing with or that we were seeing with. Because in animal welfare, you're not seeing always like animals getting adopted. Sometimes you're picking them off the side of the road. Sometimes you're, doing something that it just makes you sad. And going to the shelter, I had to go to the shelter 3 times a week to pick up animals. I had to do animal pickups from people. So that in itself started to wear on me. And in that community, I was seeking people to sort of bond with and find community with. But that community is very different. And the humanistic side of it sometimes gets a little bit dismissed because we're so focused on the animals. And I feel like with us, what we're doing now, it's so human focused. And still we're coming into that compassion fatigue, because what we have is a fatigue of being too compassionate and too understanding and trying to see it from the other side, right? We want to understand, and we want to know how we can better help and how we can better serve and how we can become better people ourselves. And that can only come in a place where you're open and you're compassionate. So in what we do, I have experienced folks that feel some kind of way when you express community with someone. And it's sad because it defeats the purpose, if we're organizing for something together, but I don't get invited to another event, I'm not going to hold her against it. But I've seen people get really, really hurt. And that makes it really hard to continue that community building with folks, because then you get discouraged. And I think our dynamic and what has brought us together, I think, is very special, because none of us, I feel like, are in that place where we're like, you're doing really well, I got to keep up with you, or you're not doing really well, I'm so much better than you. Like, it's not like that. We're looking at each other like, how can I help you? This is how I need help. Where can we serve together as a community? So that compassion, it does get to you, and it does create that burnout. And it's really hard sometimes to find a community that understands what that's like without it letting it get too personal.
Yeah, and that this is perfect, like, to move into like the next part of this conversation, which is the Trump administration coming in, and how that is affecting corporate America, and what does that look like for us, and what can we expect, right? And like careers and jobs that are already so demanding with the structure that we have currently, and knowing that budgets are being cut means more work is going to be expected on every individual. So that compassion fatigue and that burnout is going to be reached a lot faster than we've experienced. And how do we like really help and protect our youth, which are the most vulnerable right now when it comes to like corporate America, when it comes to nonprofits, when it comes to exploitation of work, right? A lot of our young organizers are experience that. And so we're reaching the top of the hour. So
Yeah, I mean, I want to say thank you for everything that y'all have shared. I actually do want to propose a question, but before that, I just want to remind everyone that you are tuned in to Voces Unidas on Radio Lean KROJ 101.5 FM, broadcasting live from Panorama City, California. I'm here with the intelligent, beautiful, well-rounded, capable, funny, fun to be around co-host. We got to my left,
Zacarias.
to their left,
Maria.
and to her left.
Diosy.
And I'm Alex Infinity. Thanks y'all for tuning in. But I do want to propose a question. Going full circle back to the story you were sharing about the young Zapatista being visited from you said
The
like
future.
100 years from now, right? Like
2144.
2140. Yeah, like, and the kind of the thing that you said that they took away from it was like it depends on what you do today or in your time. And that makes me wonder, with everything that we've talked about, everything considered, like, what is, like, one thing that we could leave with ourselves and maybe for anyone listening? One thing that's, like, practical that anyone, whether they're, have a job or school, that they can do every day that, like, well, at least little by, what's one thing they can take away, they can, action item they can do that, I don't know, will help in that long-term goal. That Zapatista from 2144, you said?
2144.
Yeah. What's one thing? Or we could come up with one thing,
Yeah.
Like,
Read, study, question, criticize. I think it all begins with education.
Yes.
The public education system is not going to offer the next generation, young people today, unless you have a really dope teacher. But we have to take it upon ourselves, even as adults and elders, but also instill in young people the importance of the word and studying history. That's something that was also shared at this encuentro in Chiapas, hearing from the first generation of abuelas zapatistas. They said they've arrived to where they're at, 30 plus years of organized movement, of organized revolution. They didn't have any books. They didn't have any manuals. All they did, word for word, what they shared was study and analyze the lives of their ancestors on the finca, on plantations, and how they survived, and applied that here and question and discuss what we're doing now. We need to talk more with each other. We need to transform our social relationships, or what some people call the social revolution. First, one thing you can do today as an action item, say hello to your neighbor. If you don't know your neighbor, we can't expect to get out of this mess. I don't even know my own neighbors. We say hi and bye, but it's very rare that we stop even a stranger on the street. How are you doing? What's your name? How are you feeling today? Like, it's so strange to do that in this society. There's not that camaraderie here because we're so trained since young. You got to worry about yourself and yourself only first and foremost. You got to, the only way you're going to make it in this society, keep your head down, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, keep it individual, and
Crab bucket mentality too.
Yeah.
so those are, I guess, a few of my thoughts to that question.
I have a question. What if your neighbor sucks? What if your neighbor is, has been or subscribed to that other mentality? Because I would deal with that. I'm like, what do you do?
I have a neighbor like that in my block, and this is very clearly conservative couple. And I've had dealings with them before. We had an incident where they brought down their dog to say hi to my dog behind a fence, and something bad happened. So it was, you created a problem for me, and then created another problem. So I really wonder, like, what they feel like right now, and because they are literally in the middle of just nothing but raza, Latinos, gente, that you and I deal with on a daily basis. And when they moved a few years ago, it wasn't as overtly conservative. Like, they were trying to be nice and feel like we had this like neighborhood block party feeling to it, but like nobody was like, we don't know who you are. And now they're like super conservative because their car has just, the bumper stickers are just very much very, very loud, right? So I wonder, like, what are they feeling like? Are they feeling like I am in a neighborhood that many people don't look like me, or I am in a neighborhood and I am now the majority, so to speak, because we have a conservative president? So I wonder about that. But yeah, my neighbors, they're not very good people. Yeah. So I and they try to be nice, but it's a little scary. It feels weird. Like you said, it feels weird. But that's also because we haven't been friendly with each other. Yeah. So that was very surprising. They came in very much like, we want to be friends with everybody, and then they created a problem for us. So that was very confusing and a little scary, because then they forgot that they created a problem, and they're like, we want to be friends. And we're like, no thank you. No, thank you. Yeah. Appreciate that, but no thanks.
Yeah. I mean,
you have a neighbor problem too.
Oh gosh, I don't even want to get into that.
Yeah, sometimes sometimes
my neighbor problems are serious, y'all.
Yeah, sometimes that sometimes can make it difficult. Having a safe space that's not always completely safe, because
my neighbors have gone so far that they've talked to people I work with to try to like get at me, and
the strangest part about that is that those people listened. It was like
the people I worked with listened.
Right. They were like, oh, okay, no, I get it, I understand. And then it was like, no, you don't. You don't understand. You don't know anything about this. So kindly see yourself out.
Very not neighborly. But, along with that question, I have another question. Because not only is it your neighbors sometimes that you don't get along with, sometimes it's like those like people that you're supposed to be in community with. Like those like, hermanos, hermanas that you should be able to reach out to. And, how do you like navigate that? Like, how do you navigate having someone in your community that like you just don't click with, but like if you could do so much work together. Like you could build together, but like there's genuinely just not like, the energy's just not there, right? And so like for me, those are questions too, because I feel that's like my comadre was saying, there's that animosity amongst organizers, amongst creatives, amongst businesses of like, I want to be the best,
or I want to do it first,
but
not well.
How do you navigate that when how do you navigate that? Like, how do you navigate working with people that you don't get along with, and like, but like, like it's for the benefit of the community to get along with these people. And so, but these are all conversations that like play into, what's going on in the community right now, and like helping one another through like society and I don't know, but those are personal struggles to me, like the whole neighbor thing. And
as a third party
community.
observer, though, I mean, I didn't really get to know you until, you know, the last year, but before that we were kind of acquaintances, and I know what you're talking about. You know, that's the struggle of working in spaces with people that you don't get along with. But I have witnessed this and not because I'm biased, because I love my best friend, but I have never witnessed anybody that I personally work with have any ulterior motive or feelings. If anything, sometimes I feel like I'm the one that feels like weird, because I'm like, am I too overly suspicious, or am I not? Like, sometimes I think it's me. So to me, it's really interesting to see those folks that we have collectively tried to work with shrink away because of something that I couldn't see was the reason for that rift. And it always led back personally. When I saw it, it wasn't you, and it wasn't anything that we did. It always went back to that person and what was going on in their lives. And I think that's what we as organizers have to be very conscious of, that, of not bringing our own personal biases. And it's like that saying of like, you leave it at the door. Because when you're organizing, you're trying to work together towards a goal. And I have seen some folks that feel like they could do it better. Oh, that's great. I wish you nothing but success, and hopefully we can work in the future. But that connection of building community, that shouldn't end because of that. We shouldn't just be like, oh, I felt slighted by Zacarias, so I'm not going to engage with you out in community because I felt slighted. Not because of anything that you did that really gave us a bad name, or that anything that you did. It was because of what I felt. I think, personally, I have to work on that too. But it is something that I see in our community right now, and especially because we're all scared and we're all stressed and we're all having that cognitive dissonance moment where we don't really know what's real and what's actually supposed to happen. I feel like that makes it worse. And that's where we have to be really, really conscious. And like Zacarias said, like, how are you going to act for tomorrow? And how is, you not processing your feelings correctly or whatever, is that going to impact how you work? And if you can give it 100% for tomorrow, why not give it 100% for tomorrow? Why only give it 60%? Because that 40%, you're like, no, that's mine. I don't get. That's weird.
It makes me think, as far as the neighbor thing, someone that's just like your geographical neighbor, like that's one thing. But if you're, two or more people who do have this mentality of like community and building this, there's obviously a common goal. And I think it goes back to the first action item is like, maybe, I don't know, maybe this is not the right answer, but it makes me think maybe the solution would be like conversation, like,
dialogue.
Exactly, dialogue, and like real unbiased, maybe have a mediator, a talking circle of some sort, and like, if there is like, again, that common goal, maybe you can find, even if it isn't like, okay, maybe we can't work together, but let's like coexist in that same space. And then if it doesn't, then I don't know, then you have to ask someone wiser. But
right, then you have to ask them like, well, then why are you doing this community work or whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish? Because truly, if it's truly community work for the better of your people, so that you can see your people thrive along with you, there shouldn't be that like, oh, I'm hurt, or oh, I'm feeling some kind of way, or there's too many of us, I wanted to do this first. That to me is silly, and it doesn't help us move the goal along. It's sort of like you said, like it's a crabs in a bucket. Like, I'm almost out and I could pull all of you with me, but there's somebody that's going to be like, no, I don't think that person deserves it, so I'm going to push it. I'm going to pull it down. Like,
yeah. And I think that's exactly where I feel that's where like our community keeps having these issues, is that there's so many of us trying to do the same things, which is like, hello, of course, we're all living through the same times, the same, like, as human beings, we have all these ideas, but we're not limited to them. Like, another human being can have the same ideas as you, you know? But I think it's just about, like, learning how to really, like, know your values, like, where your value is, and know, and, like, trusting yourself. So a lot of it is, like, building up your own self-confidence, building up yourself, you know, and unfortunately, like, no matter how much you build yourself up, like, if that other person in your community isn't doing the same and isn't building themselves up and working on themselves, you know, that's we're gonna have these rifts and these problems. But that's where we come back to, like, education. Like, that's the key, is educating community, and, you know, understanding our mentor, Nana. You know, that's something that she taught me, is community is gonna let you down, girl. Like, she told me, like, you know, like, don't ever think that you're safe anywhere. Like, she told me, like, I've built up community in so many different spaces, and I've had to walk away from them to save myself, to save, you know, because they started using the medicine in a way that wasn't what I considered it to, like, be the right way. And so I had to walk away from that community and leave them with the best intentions and wishing nothing but the best for them, you know, and like, you know, understanding that, like, yeah, like, you're gonna be let down, and that your heart is gonna hurt, but, like, that's what love is, you know. That's what, like, caring about your community is. Like, it's like, you have to care, even though you know you're gonna be done wrong sometimes. You know that you're not always gonna get the credit that you deserve. You're not always, like, you have to, like, be willing to put yourself in that position, and not everybody is, and that's, you know, people are scared to do that. And I think that the more that you lean into that, the more that you'll find people that are also leaning into that. And then eventually you'll end up in a circle where this is what works. And, like, you know that even though somebody hurt you in your village or in your circle, that, you know, that hurt, there's a process to get through it, you know, versus, like, out here in the normal world and where everybody else, like, once there's hurt, everything dies there, you know, like, you get cut off, you get cancel culture, you know, like, all of this other stuff. It's like, that's why we have to build up our communities, because, like, we're not perfect as human beings, you know. And so, but yeah, like, I'm so grateful that I have, like, in my village, like, so much understanding, and we've all kind of gone through so much, and, like, especially within the last year, and there's been times where we've felt like this person let us down or that person let us down, but in reality, like, everybody is going through their personal struggles, and they're not trying to let us down. Like, it's just the way that life works, and we have to learn how to have compassion, empathy, understanding, collectively, right? And then if we don't open ourselves up to that, then we're not going to. And the society that we live in does not allow us to open ourselves up to that. It's that fear, like, it's better to have a small circle than to get hurt. Like, no, like, hurt is inevitable. Like, it's literally a part of life. It's part of this. Like, you have to be willing to get hurt. But yeah, that was a little bit of a rant.
I would like to. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No.
Yeah, this conversation is just, you know, a reminder that a lot of what we're trying to do is easier said than done. Mm-hmm. And this thing about, you know, getting to know your neighbor or getting to know a stranger, that's one of the most things that is easier said than done. That is clear right now, right? But it also reminds me of this quote by Desmond Tutu, who I forget his exact role, but he played a major role in what was called the Peace and Reconciliation Committee during the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa, and he hosted these conversations between the apartheid British leaders and the South African peoples in order to do what we call today transformative justice. And he has this quote that goes, that I really try to live by: if you want peace, Don't talk to your friends, talk to your enemies. And I feel like that's what needs to be done, as ugly and as much as we don't want to do it, and as much as it just brings us rage. Like, who wants to sit and listen to our Latino for Trump neighbor, like, rant about how much they love him, you know? Or who wants to, like sit and listen to this racist person do their racist thing? But I feel like I'm at a point in my life where I'm looking forward to the opportunity where I can, like, sit down with a cop, with the ICE agent, with a Latino for Trump, and just listen to them and try to understand how they got to where they are in their consciousness. And just ask them, like, why do you feel that way? Or do you really believe where you stand? Or who taught you that? Or what kind of environment did you grow up in? Because I feel like through doing that and asking these kinds of questions, we'll find that we might have more in common than we do different, and how we struggle. And it all goes back to capitalism. I think capitalism invents new ways, infinite ways to suffer on a daily basis. And this division that we experience, this misery that we experience in the day-to-day, this burnout, this lack of energy that we've been talking about, it's all by design. It's all by design. And I would like to shift, if possible, to the next segment. But this conversation, it's all interrelated.
Yeah.
Everything we're touching on can all be weaved together. It's not linear. It's circular. And this next segment I want to bring up is on what's called Youth Justice Reimagined and Elders. Youth Justice Reimagined is a document that was created by system impacted and formerly incarcerated, as well as allies youth. A document full of proposals to building alternatives to youth incarceration. Youth Justice Reimagined. We have someone right here in the house, Alex Infinity, who was part of that process years ago. But this document, out of years, decades of grassroots organizing against police brutality, against youth incarceration, in 2020, I believe, I need to double check that year, but the LA County Board of Supervisors adopted this document called Youth Justice Reimagined. Tia Chuchas was another contributor to that. And they used this document to develop this really new department called the LA County Department of Youth Development that has only existed since 2022. Came from grassroots movement, building alternatives to youth incarceration. And so there's regional initiatives happening currently. Started first in South Central. There's one in East LA, Antelope Valley, Long Beach, and more recently is here in the San Fernando Valley. I'm speaking on this as someone who is going to be new in this role in welcoming young people and allies and the community of the Northeast San Fernando Valley to come and learn what Youth Justice Reimagined is all about. And it's still being built. It's meant to invite the visions and the desires and the needs of young people in this community. So we'll be having a first in-person meeting on Thursday, February 27th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. at the Midnight Hour Records in San Fernando in the San Fernando Mall.
So if you want to learn more, go ahead and check that out. Where can they find that information?
You can check it out on the LA County Department of Youth Development Instagram. Yeah, that'll be the best source. But this conversation is also tied with elders in that I feel like we are. I can only speak on my experience, right? But elders are hard to come by. Not elders just in age, but elders with something to teach, guidance, wisdom. And I think the lack of those mentors, role models is what leads us to not really knowing how to move through life being solid, not really knowing what is our purpose here, or to develop that self-esteem that we are of value in this world. Like, it doesn't matter if we exist in some type of conventional American what it means to be successful. Just to simply exist as a young person is not valued anymore unless you're a good worker. There's this guy named John D. Rockefeller. Apparently, he has something to do with the establishment of the U.S. Department of Education, one of the like richest persons in the world at the time, right? He has this other quote that goes, "I want a nation of workers, not a nation of thinkers." And I think that kind of mentality is so embedded in our education system, and it affects youth to this day, and the way that young people are treated in schools, the type of education that we are allowed, the type of creativity or non-creativity that we are allowed to express. So that's what this initiative is all about. And I'll pause right there if anyone else has any other thoughts.
I have more of a reflection. We had a couple of youth here on Monday. Bunch of young ladies, currently, like, their age ranges is from, I think, 8 to 17. And they had pretty powerful discussion about their education and their thoughts on education. One of them is homeschooled by choice, and she joined a homeschool program, the 17-year-old. And through that program, she was empowered to do a lot of volunteer work and has now started her own community initiative. And so she does community work. And I'm talking about Miranda from the MACT project. And along with her, we had a couple other young ladies, one of them being my daughter. And what my daughter was reflecting on was, Miranda started the MAC project around art not being as accessible to youth, to kids, and wanting to make that more accessible, especially because of the mental health impact that art has on our youth in the community. And so my daughter went on to reflect, it's not fair that in school, it's already decided what we have to learn, and we don't really get to choose that, at a young age. You have to wait to get older to have, the possibility of an elective. But she's like, it would be nice if, you can start, navigating or kind of exploring career options or different options, even as in elementary school. And so she was referring to wanting to have more time to be creative at school, and not just to have more freedom of I guess where her education is going. And the rest of the girls all seemed to agree, and they felt that dedicating so many hours to one subject, even though these subjects are important to learn and they're hard, that they still would like to have more options. And so that's interesting that you're saying that, because I think definitely the youth of today are feeling that. They feel very limited, and yeah, so that was just a little bit of a reflection from the conversation we had on Monday.
Some more thoughts I have related to this conversation on youth is part of my work involves going into juvenile halls, or one juvenile hall, Barry J. Nidorf, right here in Sylmar, and taking in art, being a role model, a mentor, and just reminding these young people, young men, that they're still human, that they're still worthy, that they still matter, regardless of whatever got them in there. But it's very interesting, but also very painful and disturbing to hear and getting to know some of these youth. When we ask them the question of what does culture mean to you, a lot of them can't answer. That word doesn't have any meaning, which I think that speaks volumes about what's lacking in young people's communities, in schools, in the classroom, and in their families. This country thrives off of emptying us of our culture and who we are and identity.
Yes.
Because when you're so empty, then you can fill it up with all these consumer material things and just consume until you don't know who you are anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this drive, this hunger that is expressed by these young people that I'm honored to work with inside of true rehabilitation, but they're not getting it in there because the system is not designed for that.
Mm-hmm.
It's up to these outside programs that already have it hard enough just trying to get in there through the bureaucratic system, the ones who actually want to put in the work to support these youth, than the people who are employed by the county. It's up to these programs like us to, take on that responsibility, at least a small piece of it, and help guiding these young people to rehabilitation, to transformation, things that you shouldn't have to wait to be incarcerated for, to have the resources or the experience to do. So just the idea of incarcerating youth and how normalized it is, and some people really truly believe that certain youth are inclined to violence. Like, think about the super predator myth in the 80s or 90s, something like that. Criminalizing, hyper demonizing young black, brown, young men that were just born with these predestined inclinations to resort to violence. And how vicious, how malicious people who create these kinds of policies and rhetoric and propaganda can be. So that's my rant. I will pass the palabra.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, it's a lot of food for thought, Zacarias. And, it's just always so crazy because we always have these conversations off air, and then we kind of curate a program for you guys, and then, we come in and we do follow the program, but the conversation always takes its own path, and just thank you for the work that you're doing, Zacarias, and everybody in here. We're all doing such amazing work, but our youth need us to reconnect with our elders. I think that's our job, and that's something that Maria, my comadre Maria, and I are very passionate about, and it's something that we talk about a lot on our Las Comadres show, which is basically one of the key factors is like bridging those generational gaps and learning how to be those elders now, because like you said, in order to look forward to the future, we have and have the future we want, we have to take those tangible action steps now. And so, I'm grateful that I'm surrounded by intentional young adults and adults that are educating themselves so that we can provide that wisdom to our youth when the time comes. And your time is now. We were talking about it yesterday, how what did you call it, the space that you're in, that in between young youth and adult,
transitional age.
Yeah, so transitional age. And but you're already like having these like conversations with youth not so much younger than you,
right?
And you're becoming somewhat of a mentor to these young individuals. And I think that's very important to learn that, just because you're young, just because you're you don't have so much life experience, doesn't mean that you can't be a mentor or you can't be a role model to somebody. A lot of I have a youth in my life who, she's 8 years old, and little homie is a role model to me. I'm talking about Muha, and like the way that she carries herself, and she speaks with so much determination, and she's such a compassionate individual, so aware of herself, and like it's something that I strive to be, and so this little individual, like this little girl, like I look up to her so much. And so I think it's really important to know, like, that we all have that in us, that we can all be mentors, we can all be role models to somebody, and it just takes for us to have that intention, to be good and to do good for our community. And I think everybody in this team, in this room, like, we have those intentions. And so it's really, I'm really lucky to be around you guys and to be able to feed off of your energy to fill my cup, to continue doing this work. But we're right at the end of our segment. Zacarias, any last words, anything that you want to wrap up with?
I just want to thank everyone for listening and thank everyone in the room for this Plactica, and to keep it going.
Mm-hmm.
Keep it going.
Thank you. Alex?
I'm also super grateful to be here with y'all, to be having these conversations, to be a part of it, and to just be able to listen to all of you share your thoughts and ideas. It is super inspiring, and I guess taking it back to Zacarias' action item, to talk to your neighbor, talk to someone, and ask them about themselves, and also you said read books, educate yourself. 2 things, pick whichever one. And yeah, thank y'all so much for having me and letting me be a part of this beautiful community.
Thank you. Tere, my comadre?
Just thankful for the platform, for the opportunity, for the connections, for the community, and just reminding everybody to take care of yourselves. It's really hard right now in a lot of different ways, emotionally, physically. A lot of people are going through different things. So just be kind to yourself, be kind to your loved ones. Always remember that your loved ones are there, and hug them if you can, because right now I think we all need the extra love and reassurance that we can get. So yeah.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, comadre. Quick shout out to Melissa and Teodora, who were not able to be here with us. Shout out to our production and director, our production team, and our director, Daniel Molina and Mike. And then just quick shout out to Pueblo y Salud, Valley Views, and Radio Olin for allowing us to be here and to have these conversations with y'all and connect with you guys. So on that note, we'll be back with Las Comadres tomorrow, and we'll have a nice conversation with El Santo del Valle.
Yes.
And so El Santo del Valle is our guest for tomorrow, and we'll see what we get into tomorrow with them. So I hope you guys have a lovely rest of your weekend, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.